Hello and welcome to this presentation on holistic training and support for Bible translation teams. My name is Eszter Ernst-Kurdi. I come from Hungary and I work with SIL in Francophone Africa in the domain of training. I wonder what comes to your mind when you hear the word teams. I suspect that we all have some quite positive memories from working in teams, either during our training or at work, but probably we also all have some frustrating experiences where maybe our memory suggests that team stands for together everyone annoys me. Or maybe you have experienced that someone with very good intentions put you together with others to work together as a team, gave you the same t-shirt, just like as depicted in this cartoon, and thought that you will be right away able to work together well. As we know, this often doesn't turn out so well in real life. And many times, if we are honest, this is what we do with some of our translation teams. But team conflicts happen. There is stress involved in teamwork. So given the theme of our conference, I wondered whether the quality of the translation is affected by the psychological well-being of the translators and the relationship that they have within their teams. Insights from the emerging field of translation psychology seem to confirm this. There have been studies done that show that stress, anxiety, and the translator's ability to regulate their emotions can have a significant impact on the speed at which they work, the accuracy of their translation, and the creativity that they can harness to produce good translations. So what are the implications of this for translator training? In the literature you can find quite a few recommendations, but here I would like to focus on three. The first one is to include personal development courses in translator training curriculum. This will help translators become more self-aware and to be able to regulate their emotions and to deal with stresses at work so that they don't negatively impact the quality of their translation. Secondly, introduce team assignments early on in the training with enough time and space for reflection on teamwork. Thirdly, it is suggested that translator trainers help students to become more aware of how they can harness the power of their emotional intelligence and their creativity in order to produce better quality translations. If we take into consideration the implications of translation psychology for translator training and development, we also need to think about what translator competence is. I really appreciate Kirale's socio-constructivist approach to translator training because he sees it as an emerging, holistic learning experience and not a sum of a set of different skills that a novice translator can add on and one day become a competent translator. Kirale's approach helps us to see the incredible complexity that is involved in the translator's work in itself and also in novice translators' training. According to Kirale, translators emerge, they are not trained. They emerge through a lot of authentic experiences and a web of relationships, both with other translators, with their teachers, with the market, and with different clients. And through this complex experience, they grow in their many different skills that are needed for translator competence. He sees translator competence as a self-perpetuating, ongoing process. He also emphasizes a community approach. He believes that the best way to train translators is a project-based, authentic approach in the classroom, where the instructor and the learners together form a holistic learning community where they take on real-life projects and work on them together. And in this context, as an instructor, he becomes a co-learner with the students, and they are able to give each other feedback, not just on translation competencies, but also on interpersonal competencies and intrapersonal competencies that, as we have seen from the research, can have a strong impact on the quality of the work. I believe that such a holistic approach is also needed in Bible translator training and development, and this needs to emphasize interconnectedness and integration, how each domain contributes in the Bible translation and language development ministry. The integration also refers to integrating mind, body, and soul, having a holistic view of developing translator competence. Teamwork needs to be emphasized right from the beginning of the training, and this doesn't just happen by chance, just like we've seen with the cartoon in the beginning. Putting people into a group and giving them the same look will not make them into a team. So teams will need some help and facilitation so that they can work better together and more efficiently to discover who can contribute what and how they can communicate well together. Reflective practice is also very important, and I think this is absolutely not a new idea, but what might be important is to remind ourselves to make time for it in our translator training. We are often short on time, so we cram a lot of activities that focus on technical skills, which are good, but without leaving enough time for reflective practice, debriefing of why we do certain things and how we can improve on the process, will leave the translator trainees short-handed. It will not help them to develop self-reflection, self-awareness that will later on serve them really well. I also believe that contemplative approaches, especially when it comes to reading the scriptures, are very valuable. Translators are used to engaging with the scriptures in a very analytical way as they dissect passages, as they exegete the meaning of the original text, and that's all very good. But sometimes for them to be able to engage with the scriptures in a fresh way, it is good to introduce contemplative approaches such as Lectio Divina, Visio Divina, Prayer of Examen, and many of the spiritual practices that have been in the Christian tradition for centuries and millennia. In 2018, I did a small-scale research in Africa with 21 participants. They were all students in the Delta courses, both in the Anglophone and Francophone side, came from 17 different countries, from various organizations, but they were all involved in Bible translation and language development. And I wanted to find out from them what causes the most conflicts in their teams. And as you can see, their responses are represented in this word cloud. The most often mentioned responses were personality differences, communication problems, lack of teamwork, lack of healthy conflict resolution, and unforgiveness and jealousy. As you can see, they did not right away talk about funding or exegetical problems, not even orthography questions, but these very human problems that can create a lot of friction in teamwork. I also asked them what kind of support they would need in their work. And here is the word cloud that represents the responses to this question. As you can see, by far, they all mentioned the need for a person, a mentor, who can walk alongside them, who can pray for them, encourage them, who keeps in touch, who is not just interested in the work that they do, in the number of verses they translate, but who can be a friend on the journey. So how do we respond to such needs? I believe that we can take inspiration from theological education, where a fourfold model to training ministers and leaders in the church is quite common, where you can see academic engagement and ministerial training paired with spiritual formation and character and virtue education, where the emphasis is just as much placed on growing as a disciple of Christ and growing in our character as on ministerial skills and academic skills. I found some really challenging quotes from theological education that I would like to share with you. Of those who graduate from seminary, very few fail in ministry because of inability to study, think, teach, or preach, the skills and content we focus on in seminary. Failure in ministry is linked to difficulties in character. Virtue, to put it bluntly, is a revolutionary idea in today's world and today's church. We have had enough of pragmatists and self-seeking risk-takers. We need people of character. That's a comment from N.T. Wright. We strongly encourage seminaries and all those who deliver leadership training programs to focus more on spiritual and character formation, not only on imparting knowledge or grading performance, and we heartily rejoice in those that already do so. And that is a quote from Cape Town Commitment from the Lausanne Movement. I wonder how much of these quotes also apply to Bible translator training. In response to the survey in 2018 in SIL Cameroon, we started a new initiative that is called Spiritual Formation and Team Development Initiative. In this initiative, we organize yearly retreats and team building sessions for each translation team that SIL partners with. These are often translators employed by local language committees or interchurch committees, so they are not automatically part of our SIL rhythm and yearly retreats and prayer meetings. We invite them to come together for a week each year, and the goals of these retreats are rest and refreshment, encouragement, spiritual formation, and team development. As much as possible, we try to involve local pastors in each context, with the hope that as time goes on, they will be able to take on more and more of the responsibility to care holistically for the well-being of the translation teams. Currently, there are over 80 participants in Cameroon taking part in these retreats each year. We focus on the theme of journeying together. That's the title we have given to these retreats. We are on the journey together, and each year we stop for a breather to rest and to take time to be refreshed and to gain new energy to continue on the journey. Each retreat focuses on 4 areas. The first one is that you have a soul and it needs care and attention. I think it was Parker Palmer who said that the soul is like a wild animal living in the woods. If you want to observe it, you need to be very quiet and still, otherwise you will not be able to see it. And I think it's very true for our world where we are very busy in ministry. We need to slow down and take time to be still so that we can see and hear what our soul is saying and let God speak to it directly. The second area of focus is rhythms of grace. How can we keep pace with Jesus? Practicing spiritual disciplines that can sustain us as individuals and also as a team or a community. The third area of focus is teamwork. Here we try to emphasize that teams don't just work together efficiently by chance. So how can we find out what the strengths of each person are in the team and how can they improve on their communication and draw on each other's strengths to work together with less friction, less conflict. The fourth area is character growth. In this area, we talk explicitly about setting goals to grow in our character. For example, we look at the fruit of the Spirit, the values that we hold, how do they match up with Jesus' values, and what are the virtues that we would like to practice and grow in as disciples of Christ. Here you can see our daily schedule for these retreats. As you can see, they are very light on content so that we can keep enough space for personal reflection, silence and solitude, and also rest. In the morning, we tend to focus more on spiritual disciplines, participatory Bible studies, and personal time and reflection. In the afternoons, we engage in a team building activity, usually that sparks lots of good discussions that we can then draw on to make resolutions, help each team to improve their teamwork together. We make handouts, and these are very well appreciated by the participants because many of them are pastors, so they often use them in their churches and youth groups after the retreat. So the ripple effect of these retreats go far beyond the translation team. At the end of each retreat, each team agrees on a goal, a team resolution, something that they want to work on in the next 6 months to improve their teamwork. We take note of these resolutions and try to follow up with them after 6 months, not to check on them, but to encourage them and to see how we can pray for them. The ethos of these retreats can be summed up in 4 points. The first is that we try to create a safe place where they can feel free to express themselves. It is very important that we keep these retreats free from any attempt at manipulating people or putting pressure on people. The second thing is that it's not prescriptive. Many times when we talk about spiritual formation and character development, a lot of people are put off by these because they imagine them as a prescriptive rule book, something that we have to abide by and change our outside behavior just to be accepted. And that's not at all what we are aiming for. We're aiming for creating a safe place where we can put ourselves into God's presence, where He can work in us. We also want these retreats to be an occasion for us facilitators to grow together and to model good teamwork. So this means that every time we ask a team to do an activity or a reflection, we also do it ourselves in our team so that we can grow and also encourage one another. And finally, these retreats are structured, even though they are very community oriented. I believe it's very important to have structures and a clear plan for these retreats. We can't just show up and hope that something will happen, although of course the Holy Spirit can work in mysterious ways. But to create this safe place where everyone can express themselves freely, I think we need boundaries and good structures where everyone feels accepted and can know that whatever they share in the group will stay in the group. So what is the impact of these retreats after 5 years? For this presentation, I wanted to find out what my colleagues would say about that. So here are some self-reported testimonials from those who participate in the retreats, and then the results of a short survey that I sent out to people who work with these teams. God spoke to me in a very personal way this morning. I have discovered that I can read the Bible with my heart and not just read it for the purposes of my translation and preaching ministries. Spending time alone with God in solitude has not been part of my life. There is always so much to do. This week, I realized that I need to be alone with God in order to feed my soul. I want to implement this discipline into my rhythm. This is the only occasion I have to be strengthened and transformed by God's word in community, and to be resourced for my different responsibilities in ministry. 13 translation consultants and exegetical advisors, project facilitators and administrators filled in the survey about impact that they have observed in the teams. And here are the 4 points that were most often mentioned by them. Number 1, more trust between team members. 77% of them said they have observed this positive change in the teams that they work with. Number 2 was better teamwork and communication. Number 3, fewer arguments. And number 4, significant personal change in the life of at least one of the team members. Some other comments that were mentioned, for example, the retreats provide invaluable healing for ongoing and repeated lived trauma. As we work in sensitive contexts, where the translators are living in dangerous situations, these retreats provide a safe place where they can rest and be refreshed, which will have an impact on the quality of their translation work. Someone also commented, the translators feel valued by SIL. This makes me very happy. This is what the retreats are all about, that our partners, the translators we work with, feel valued, feel seen as people, not just as tools who can get the translation done. And finally, as conclusion, I would just like to repeat again that I firmly believe that providing intentional, integrated, holistic training and support for Bible translation teams can have a valuable, very positive effect on the teams and therefore on the quality of their work. And I would like to finish with some recommendations. If you're a trainer, may I encourage you to include activities in your teaching that will help learners reflect on their personal, spiritual, and character development, as well as on team dynamics, and not just on technical translation competencies. You could include a study on the fruit of the Spirit and ask the teams to self-evaluate. Which ones of the elements, gentleness, kindness, patience, self-control, which ones are most evident in our teamwork, and which ones are the ones that we would like to grow in because they are the least evident? You can also have team building exercises and then take time to debrief them and help each team member to find something new that they can learn about themselves and about their impact in the team. If you're a manager or an administrator, I would like to encourage you to include in your yearly planning a regular event that focuses on the holistic development of your teams. Even if it's just a couple of days a year, but a week would even be better, to take time and have this space set aside where teams can feel valued and where they are helped to grow in a holistic way and not just in their technical competencies. And finally, if you're a funder, I hope that this research will convince you that these retreats and team building events can have a very positive impact on the team and therefore also on the quality of their translation. The return on investment is well worth it. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions and comments.